Cllr Roger Harmer to move the First Amendment.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I move the amendment in my name and seconded by Councillor Jan. I would like to thank Councillors Francis and Tennant for raising the temporary accommodation crisis in their motion today. It is a truly appalling situation of quite staggering size. What is more, it was entirely preventable and has come about because of an abject failure of national housing policy over the past 40 years that all governments have been complicit in, putting short-term financial and political gain over the investment needed to maintain adequate housing provision. Due to that failure, we now need not just to pay for the resulting extra current costs, such as rocketing temporary accommodation charges, but additionally to reinvest substantially in new social housing provision to get back to where we were. Last week's budget, while providing some welcome modest moves in the right direction, goes nowhere near far enough to unwind the backlog of investment built up since the 1980s. So our amendment builds on the motion in what is intended to be a positive cross-party way. Firstly, we feel that in light of the points I've just made, it is important that the Council recognises that the temporary accommodation crisis is going to be with us for years. It's going to get worse before it gets better, and will have a huge impact on the lives of tens of thousands of our residents. The motion makes play of our strategy and that we are doing no worse than other similar councils, something which is rather unusual for this council. Yet despite this, the number of families in temporary accommodation has at times been rising at a rate approaching of 100 a month. Let's put it another way. A former nursing home in my ward has just been converted into temporary accommodation, and it opened a couple of weeks ago. It has 44 bedrooms and currently houses 33 families. At the current rates, the extra capacity that that home provides has already been used up by growth in demand since it opened. The danger is that in the heat of this crisis and the dire financial situation this Labour administration has brought us to, we focus overwhelmingly on the severe financial aspects of the issue and don't ensure that we have the systems to support residents and their neighbours. As an anecdotal example, when that new TA centre opened, neither I nor my ward colleague were informed, despite being actively engaged with the TA team about it in the past and being actively engaged with planning. These centres are sadly going to be necessary for years, and many of their residents may well live there for years. Opening them without even informing the local members or indeed getting planning permission makes it more difficult for us to represent the interests of the residents and their neighbours and do what we can do to help integrate them into the wider community. Similarly, I have issues with TA residents living in individual council flats where they are not looking after their gardens and frontages, which is clearly a higher risk for people who don't expect to stay in an area. And we need to ensure that they are made aware of their responsibilities and supported, if need be, to carry them out. Moving on, it's important to recognise, as our amendment does, that the way Right to Buy has operated has been a significant cause of the current TA crisis. Now, I have no problem with Right to Buy as a concept. I think it can work well for some people and indeed was probably beneficial in the early years in which it operated, when we still had sufficient socially rented housing available. But the failure to modify the way it operated at the point where we started running out of housing was disastrous. It meant a large part of public spending on housing was used in giving big capital gains to former tenants at the expense of replacing the socially rented housing that was lost. The reforms announced recently in scaling back the level of discount, effectively from windfall level to more reasonable amounts, and in allowing local authorities to use all the receipts to boost local socially rented and affordable housing, are very welcome. But, and there is a big but here, this won't make things better, it just stops them getting worse. We also need massive investment to undo the damage caused by the past 30 years of the way Right to Buy has operated, and that is where the budget fell short. While welcoming what the government has done, our amendment then goes further and calls for local authorities to be given the freedom to decide how Right to Buy should operate in their area. We are a massively over-centralised country, which leads to poor governance when issues and problems vary from city to city and county to county. It is entirely sensible that the detailed operation of Right to Buy schemes should, as the Local Government Association has called for, be decided locally. The final part of our amendment addresses an important issue affecting on how we get out of this mess: skills and training. For sure, we can stop the loss of housing to right to buy by reforming it, and we can manage our temporary accommodation better. But if we want to make material long-term progress, we have to radically step up the building of socially rented and indeed other forms of homes. For the moment, let's just assume the government will put the financing in place to enable major progress towards this goal. As I said, the budget didn't go nearly far enough, but there was some progress. But the problem we then hit is whether we have enough skilled workers to carry out the work. This is a particular concern in Birmingham, where the neglect of investment in our council homes since 2012 now necessitates a massive catch-up investment in new roofs, wiring, bathrooms and kitchens. And like everyone, we need to retrofit our homes to make them affordably warm and tackle the climate crisis. We simply don't currently have the workforce to do all this and build the extra homes we need. I was listening to a council leader in the southeast of the country recently who complained of being penalised by the government for failing to meet their house building targets. She wasn't complaining from a NIMBY point of view. She wants the extra homes. But she said that when asked, the building firms say they simply can't increase building rates because they don't have the skilled workers they need. And that's before we start doing more. It would be shameful if we can't match the current high levels of unemployment in the city with the desperate need for more bricklayers, plasterers, plumbers and electricians. Doing this is something that's easy to say. Indeed, it's been said many times by many election candidates, but clearly much harder to deliver. We must get it right this time with a real intensity on focus until we do. So, Lord Mayor, we welcome this motion and our amendment seeks to build on it. I move. Thank you, Lord Mayor.